Welcome to day 17. It was a good day. It's nice and sunny out there. I went along the Coulée Verte, which is a former railroad turned walking, cycling, and running path. Partly sort of a ravine section, and then kind of a couple stories up, feeling elevated above street level, which was great. And just really enjoyed the greenery, getting to wander, just really feeling within the city, but a little bit of peace outside the city. It's a little bit calmer within that walking path with plenty of trees around. It felt like a nice little break to be within the city. And then off to Musée Carnavalet, which is a city-run free museum, highly recommended in the Marais, and talked about the history of Paris across different eras. Some great displays, great decorated rooms, great artifacts. And really, I think one of the messages that I take away from that is just the unpredictable, how life can change, how we see different models and different plans for buildings that didn't exactly come out that way, but also just some really big disruptions in terms of course, the French Revolution, society saying no more and pushing back on the monarchy, and really just thinking about the idea of those disruptors in our lives. Sometimes they are because events happen to us, because of a layoff, because of the death of somebody that we care about. Perhaps we're moving, changing where we live. It can be any number of changes that have us stop and ask different questions. Milestone birthdays can sometimes really trigger that as well. And I think this is an age in our 40s and 50s where we are forced to confront a certain level of self-acceptance. And I've been thinking about that a little bit as well lately, which is, I think as we're young, we have big fantasies for our lives. We think perhaps, though we might be reluctant to admit it, that somehow if we become rich and powerful, then we will finally become worthy, or we won't have the problems that we have. I think there is a degree of magical thinking, even though we don't necessarily want to see it that way, even though even some of that magical thinking represents following a particular roadmap that society is handing to us around the careers we should have, the families that we should have, the lives that we should live. And I think as we start to reach this point in our lives, there is a level of honesty that comes. And as I say, a level of self-acceptance that we're now faced with. I think we're looking at ourselves in the mirror and seeing that we are fully grown adults, though we may not always feel like it. And there are plenty out there who still have a version of Peter Pan syndrome. There is a sense of having moved forward, having taken on responsibility, having grown and worked to earn a career. And yet, if those roots of feeling unworthy, feeling that we are somehow not adequate, that something is fundamentally wrong with us, feeling that somehow everybody else has it figured out. These are the moments where we really have to confront that some of the fantasies or the crutches in terms of hope. Hope is a great thing, but hope can also be somewhat of a blinding mask, perhaps. I think we move through our lives with a whole lot of hope, and that's not to say that there isn't hope after midlife, but I think if we're realizing that some of those career options are closed to us, if becoming a billionaire is not an option for us, if being a famous Hollywood star isn't going to be an option for us, that forces us more than to just let go of our dreams. I think it also forces us to have to accept that we are who we are and where we are in our lives, and that's probably, certainly within some bounds, where we're going to be for a while yet, perhaps the rest of our lives. And that can be really uncomfortable. It can feel crushing and defeating. And it can be a hard pill to swallow to have to come to terms with that acceptance, to come to terms that we are now well into our adult lives. We are perhaps starting to think about the end of our careers. And though I hate to look at it as doors closing, because I absolutely believe this is a moment and an age where there are infinite possibilities that will open up for you. But I actually think there's almost a mourning process that needs to happen first. I think there is the need to come to terms, to look at ourselves really honestly in the mirror, to know that this is where we're at. We're maybe not going to reach 5% body fat. We're maybe not going to be Olympic athletes. As they say, maybe we're not going to be superstars in a particular high-profile career. And it forces us to reckon with what it may mean to have lived a good life, but perhaps one that didn't get the external accolades. Perhaps we've been a really great employee, a really great spouse, a really great parent. And can that be enough? Can that be enough? Can we get this simple joy out of that? Can that sustain us? Can we be happy with that? Or maybe we're in a place where everything starts to get questioned, that maybe we wish a relationship would have gone differently. Maybe we wish parts of our career would have gone differently. Maybe we wish parenting would have happened differently for us. And I think it's an important age, and it's that somewhat invisible transition. There is no marker that says, now is the moment you have to stop and reconsider your whole life and take stock and come to terms with certain things, let certain things go, and make decisions about what you want to do next. And I almost think the lack of a clear point in that journey is also some of the frustration and some of the heaviness of the journey, that we're not always able to point to the one thing that we wish was different. It is often people will talk about sort of a sense of waking up and just realizing, yeah, this is my life, and whatever fantasy life I was holding out for, I'm probably old enough where I have to now let it go, where I actually have to say, this is what it actually looks like. This is what it will largely continue to look like. And now what? And does that mean that I have regrets? Quite possibly. Should we be spending all of our time in regrets? Not necessarily. I think regrets can point to perhaps areas where there is healing that needs to happen, where there is forgiveness, where we may need to own up to certain things that we've done. But I'm also not a believer in trying to drive forward while looking in the rearview mirror. I think that we have to understand that we've been on a particular journey, that though it may not have gone exactly how we hoped, we also have to remember we were sold a lot of that journey, and sold it through society, and sold it through a whole lot of marketing that was actually designed to get us to buy. We were taught that certain things were supposed to make us happy, and maybe they don't. We were taught that buying things was supposed to make us suddenly feel worthy, or give us status, or all sorts of things that may not happen. And it can be a hard pill to swallow. And yet, I think the faster that we can sit and move into that self-acceptance, the more we're able to find strength in who we are, in where we are, and start building on that. It's almost like we're ready to finally start building our lives on some solid foundations rather than mirages and sandcastles. And I think that's where so much can change. That is where we decide what does bring us meaning and joy and fullness. Who are the people that we want to surround ourselves with, because they make it a life that is worth living more? What are the experiences that we want to have? And do we want to continue in this particular career? There may be very positive aspects. We may be enjoying the challenge. We may feel like we're contributing. But just as often, we may find ourselves disengaged in moving at a pace that feels far slower and far less effective than we wish it was. We may feel like we've been at this enough years that there's a certain amount of going through the motions. And this is where we can start to feel stuck, because I think the heaviness of looking backwards can sometimes have us doubt what direction we want to look forward. It may get in the way of the courage that may be required to move ourselves forward. And I think there was certainly huge aspects of that for me. I think as much as it was clear that I was unhappy in a corporate career, there was a part of me that didn't want to let go of climbing those last few rungs of the corporate ladder. I still felt like I had something to prove, and if I was truly honest, some version of me still believed that there was value or worthiness in a CEO title, even though I would have hated every moment of it. And that becomes the question: why are we chasing these things? Are we chasing these things because we actually want that opportunity and really want to dig deep and challenge ourselves the same way that people who run marathons or do triathlons or Ironmans want to do that? Or is it because some part of us still feels that missing piece of worthiness and is seeking it externally? And finding our way through that has to start with really an honest look at where we are, an acceptance of where we are. And there's often a grieving process with that. There is a need to perhaps feel the sadness, feel the weight of what didn't happen, of the dreams that didn't get to come true. And it is perfectly reasonable to feel grief within that. I think we hold certain images and hopes and dreams very close to ourselves. And perhaps there have been things that we've held on to for many years. And so just in the same way that we must grieve somebody that we've lost in our lives, I think there is a version of grieving the dreams that we now have to let go of, the versions of ourselves that we hoped would come true or would see the light, but aren't actually getting to come true and see the light. And so don't rush that grief process. You don't need to decide the next steps, the next goals, until you've actually spent a little bit of time understanding and really being okay with the present, determining that you've kind of had a reckoning with the self that you are, the many selves that you wanted to maybe be, the different selves you thought you would be at different ages as you looked and projected onto where you thought you would be at the age you are today. And the gap analysis, that it's probably not everything that you thought it would be. And that is true for all of us, because nobody can fully understand what their life's going to be like 10, 15, 20 years in the future. We make best guesses, and we do that based on the people we see at that age. And it may not have worked out that way. We may have been determined to do certain things or not do certain things based on wanting to do differently. Those may have come true, but other aspects and other often very external accolades, achievements, status symbols, all those sorts of things that we were really hoping on and really secretly planning for, or holding on to a piece of not wanting to sit with some uncomfortable feelings about ourselves, because we were holding on to that hope that, yeah, maybe I'll still make that $1 billion or something like that. And this is the time when I think we're finally ready to say, those were younger visions of who I was, and they're not actually accurate anymore. And it is time to let go of that hope. It is time to let go of the fantasies and the false versions of myself. And I'm ready for a more grounded and authentic version of myself, partly because we're caring less about what others think and how others approve of us or not, and partly because we're ready. We're ready to not hold on to that hope, because I think it becomes more and more obvious that it's not going to happen, and holding on to that hope actually serves us in the wrong way now. It is lying to ourselves in a certain way, and I think we can acknowledge that and start to come to terms with that. And this is that messy middle part of it. This is all of the feelings and the process and taking stock of our lives and trying to sort through where we're at in our present lives, trying to evaluate where we are in our careers and our relationships and our families and the things and how we spend our time, and starting to renegotiate all of it. But renegotiating it all, I hope, in a place that comes from the right voice, that comes from that true and authentic voice that seeks fullness and seeks genuineness more than external things. And only you will know, and it may take a few runs. You may still have some pieces that you want to hold on to. That's okay. It will happen at the right time and at the right pace. There is no one size fits all for this journey by any means. So spend that time. Spend that time, and don't be afraid to look at the mirror with some honesty and ask yourself what you need to accept in your life that you might be a little bit reluctant to, and what it means to accept it. What does it mean letting go of? What does it mean no longer hoping for? And what does it mean in terms of if who you are today is a true representation of yourself? What does that mean for you? And what pieces are you still waiting to feel complete that maybe it's time to give yourself internally, because they're never going to come externally? I think we'll wrap it there. Thank you so much for joining me. Thank you for watching. And I look forward to sharing day 18 with you. Bye for now.